You guys got a basketball question? Email them to Reggie's Mailbag at Turner.com. Hello everyone, I'm Reggie Miller coming to you from Staples Center, home of the Los Angeles Lakers and Clippers for this week's Reggie's Mailbag presented by BlackBerry, and it comes from Lars Kalkowski, and he wants to know my all-time defensive team. All right, well, let's start in the middle. Bill Walton. This is a staggering stout. He holds the record for rebounds in a half at 32. How about my power forward, Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon, two-time Defensive Player of the Year, all-time blocks leader, but more importantly, he cleaned up a lot of the mistakes by our very own Kenny Smith. How about the small forward, Sixer great and legend Bobby Jones, known for being a great six-man, but on the defensive end, locking down wing players with his length. At shooting guard, his airness himself, Michael Jordan, Defensive Player of the Year in 1988, nine-time All-Defensive First Team, played the passing lanes fantastic, and how about those cat-quick hands of your airness? And at point guard, I'm going with Joe Dumars, part of the famous Bad Boys, could guard either the point guard or the shooting guard position. Fantastic at moving his feet. So Lars, my all-time defensive team, the man in the middle, Bill Walton. At power forward, Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon. Small forward, Bobby Jones. At shooting guard, his airness, Michael Jordan. And at point guard, Joe Dumars. I appreciate your question. And if you have a question, send them to Reggie's Mailbag at Turner.com. That's Reggie's Mailbag at Turner.com. Hello everyone, this is Reggie Miller coming to you from the New Orleans Arena, home of the Hornets, for this week's question from Reggie's Mailbag presented by BlackBerry. And it comes from Hilki Junka, and he wants to know if I could assemble a team that could save the world. That's right, save the world. Who would be my starting five? Well, Hilki, this is very difficult, but I have the best starting five. And let's start with the man in the middle, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Yes, Kareem, probably the most skilled big man this league has ever seen. That patent sky hook. My power forward, I'm going with Hakeem Olajuwon, the all-time blocks leader. So that gives me a defensive presence, plus that dream shake, unstoppable. With both of those guys down low, for my small forward, I need someone who's going to spread the floor. My small forward, Larry Legend Bird. With that patent outside shot and that vision, no one's going to be able to guard him. At my shooting guard, I'm going with the greatest player ever, Air Michael Jordan, with the tongue wagon, going down the middle, dunking, and he's also another great defensive player to go along with Hakeem Olajuwon. And who's going to be the man to run the point in the middle? None other than Earvin Magic Johnson. I will have the best break with Michael Jordan on one side and Larry Bird on the other, and probably arguably the greatest passer ever in this game, Magic Johnson. So Hilke, for my starting five to save the world, I'm going with Kareem, Hakeem, Larry Legend, Air Michael Jordan, and Magic Johnson. I appreciate your question, and if you have a question for me, send them to Reggie's Mailbag at Turner.com. That's Reggie's Mailbag at Turner.com. Appreciate it, BlackBerry. Hello, everyone. I'm Reggie Miller, and welcome to this week's question from Reggie's Mailbag, coming to you from the Verizon Center, home of the Washington Wizards. This week's question comes from Christian Westergaard, who likes to know who is the best rebounder ever to play the game. Well, I'm going to mix a little of the old with the new. We're going to go back in time, and it has to start with Wilt, the Big Dipper Chamberlain. Now, at 7 feet tall, he averaged 23 rebounds, and he did it with his size. But more importantly, he was probably the strongest player ever to play this game. And if you mention Wilt Chamberlain, you have to put in Bill Russell, his arch nemesis for the Boston Celtics. At 6'9", he averaged 22 rebounds in 13 years. Also was a fantastic defensive player, anchoring that great Boston Celtics defense. And now I'm going to go a little new school with the guys I played with. One is my TNT colleague, Sir Charles Barkley. Now, he was listed at 6'6", 6'7" when he played, but we all know Charles is only 6'4", 6'5". But he averaged almost close to 12 rebounds in 15 years. And then when you speak of Charles in his era, you have to go with Carl the Mailman Malone. At 6'8", he averaged just 10 rebounds a game in over 19 years, 18 of those with the Utah Jazz. But you wanted to know who is the best rebounder ever. And in my opinion, I know this is going to shock you guys a little bit, I'm going to go with Dennis the Menace Rodman. At 6'7", 13 rebounds a game for 14 years. It was his size, his quickness, and his tenacity that, in my opinion, Dennis Rodman is the greatest rebounder ever. And don't forget, he was a pretty good defensive player as well. Now, if you have a question for me, please send them to Reggie's Mailbag at Turner.com. That's Reggie's Mailbag at Turner.com. Appreciate it. Hello everyone, I'm Reggie Miller coming to you from Staples, home of the Los Angeles Lakers, as well as Clippers. And tonight's Reggie's Mailbag for this week comes from Hugo Andrade from Portugal. He wants to know, if I was coach, how would I defend against a jump shooting team like the Lakers, as well as their best player, Kobe Bryant, who can shoot as well as attack the basket? Well, Hugo, that's easier said than done. Other than Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant is the most complete basketball player this league has seen. He can shoot from the outside, he can attack you off the dribble, left or right. He can post up, he rebounds, and he finds his open teammates. So it's a little easier said than done. But if I was coach, I would go into a box and one. I would put my best defender on Kobe Bryant, have him pick up Kobe full court or wherever Kobe is at, and I'd have the other two guys play a zone, a 2-2 zone. Now the Lakers are seventh this year in three-point shooting. They shoot 37% a game. They shoot 20 a game and make 7. That's 10th and 9th best in the league. So you got to pick your poison. I would rather live and die with them taking jump shots than Jordan Farmer, Derek Fisher, Sasha attacking the rim. So I'm going to go with a box and one on Kobe, force him baseline to my help, which would be my bigs, and let him give the basketball up to the shooters that I just mentioned, Farmer, Radmatovich, Derek Fisher, get a hand up and contest every shot. If they make it, it was meant to be that you would lose that night. But you've got to contest shooters, and you've got to put a box and one on their best player, Kobe Bryant. Now, obviously, that's if I was coaching against the Lakers. I appreciate your question, Hugo. And if you have a question for me, send them to Reggie's Mailbag at Turner.com. That's Reggie's Mailbag at Turner.com. Appreciate it, guys. Hello, everyone. I'm Reggie Miller coming to you from the Quickens Loans Arena, home of the Cleveland Cavaliers, for this week's questions from Reggie's Mailbag. And it comes from Milo Wheeler. And he says, in my opinion, Reg, who is the most dominant duo of all time? Well, obviously, Milo, there's a lot of candidates. Maybe perhaps the most dominant player of my era, Michael Jordan and his sidekick, Scottie Pippen. Both of those players dominated at both ends of the floor. Or you could go in the new millennium, Triple Ocho now, but back in the day, he was number 8, Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal. Shaquille O'Neal dominated the paint area, Kobe the perimeter. Or you could go with the perennial outside shooting of Larry Legend Bird of the Boston Celtics and Mr. Triple Threat himself, Kevin McHale. Or the pick and roll duo of John Stockton to Karl Malone. Were there any other better pick and roll players than John Stockton or Karl Malone? But you asked me who is the best and the most dominant duo of all time. In my humble opinion, I have to go with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and the Big O, Oscar Robertson. In 1971, for the Milwaukee Bucks, they won the title. Kareem averaged 32 points, 16 rebounds on 58% from the field. The Big O, pretty impressive, 19 points, 6 rebounds, and 8 assists. We all know about Kareem's patented skyhook, but he was a phenomenal passer. And the Big O, he dominated mostly smaller guards because of his size. So in my opinion, I'm going to go with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and the Big O, Oscar Robertson, as the most dominant duo of all time? I appreciate your question, Milo. And if you have a question for me, Reggie Miller, please send them to Reggie's Mailbag at Turner.com. That's Reggie's Mailbag at Turner.com. I appreciate it. If you guys got a basketball question, email them to Reggie's Mailbag at Turner.com. We are here on the edges of the Riverwalk in San Antonio, Texas. I'm Reggie Miller for this week's questions from Reggie's Mailbag, and it comes from Christopher saying he wants to know who is the toughest player I ever defended in the NBA, as well as who is the hardest players to guard in today's game. Now, obviously, that's an easy question for me. Michael Jeffrey Jordan was the toughest player I ever had to defend. I think he possessed it all. Strength, quickness, at 6'4", at 6'5", he was able to do a little bit of everything. And I tried just about everything, from hitting to holding to an occasional tussle with your airness to even try to get him kicked out. And that didn't work. I think his strength, he could post up most shooting guards. And when bigger guys tried to defend him down low, he just took you out on the floor and used his quickness. He was excellent off the dribble, and don't get beat and let him drive into your big guys, because we all know what was going to happen. The tongue was going to come out. So yeah, I would say Michael Jordan was one, but the other, I'm going to give you a little bit of a history lesson. Mitch "The Rock" Richmond. Yes, that Mitch Richmond from the Sacramento Kings. Now, when his first earlier years when he was with the Golden State Warriors, part of that run TMC with Chris Mullins, Tim Hardaway, and Mitch Richmond. But when he got traded to Sacramento, that's really when his career took off. He averaged over 22 points, 10 straight years. And a lot like Michael, it was his strength that was key. He could post up most smaller guards, and when a bigger defender went to guard him, took you out on the floor and took you off the dribble. His strength, he was so strong for most players, and on top of that, he probably was a better outside shooter from long distance than Michael Jordan, if you can believe that. So I would say Michael Jordan and Mitch Richmond were the toughest guys I ever had to defend. And in today's game, because of the new rule changes, two players really come to mind who's the toughest to guard. I would say Kobe Bryant. I put them in the same vein as a Mitch Richmond or a Michael Jordan. Kobe can do everything. He can post you up. He probably has the best handle, and I'm talking about of all guards in the NBA, and don't let the game be on the line, because we know how clutch Kobe Bryant can be. He can beat you from long distance, and like I said, he can beat you off the dribble. And another player that's so tough to guard is Allen Iverson. He's cat quick. Because of the new rules where you can't hand check or put your hands on players, he's able to roam free up and down the court. A one-time MVP. I like the fact that when he's in Denver now, because of the altitude and most players are getting tired trying to guard him, he's tireless. He's always in motion. So I would say Kobe Bryant, Allen Iverson, the two toughest players in today's game to guard. I appreciate your question, Christopher. Now, if you have a question for me, myself, please send them to Reggie's Mailbag at Turner.com. That's Reggie's Mailbag at Turner.com. I look forward to the questions. Hello, everyone. I'm Reggie Miller for this week's questions from Reggie's Mailbag, coming to you from American Airlines Center, home of the Dallas Mavericks. And with all the talks about streaks, Houston just got their 22-game win streak snapped. Kyle Kirkham has two questions. What is the longest home winning streak of all time, as well as who holds the best home record after the regular season? Well, the Bulls in 1995-96 won their first 37 games at home, obviously led by the great Michael Jordan, as well as Scottie Pippen. Dennis Rodman manning down the boards. Michael got it down from the outside as well as the inside. Scottie on defense was locking everyone up, as well as Steve Kerr. A little footnote to this, they lost their last 2 of 4 games, and their last game, who did they lose to? Indiana Pacers, yes. I had a hand in it. As well as he wanted to know the best home record after the regular season. Well, that distinction is the 1985-86 Boston Celtics. They went 40-1, only losing to the Portland Trail Blazers in December. Now, obviously, that's an unbelievable streak led by Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and the Chief. The Chief was manning the defense. So the original Big Three for Boston, 40-1 for the Celtics, the best home record. I appreciate your question, Kyle. And if you guys have questions for me, send them to Reggie's Mailbag at Turner.com. That's Reggie's Mailbag at Turner.com. I appreciate it. Hello, everyone. I'm Reggie Miller coming to you from the New Orleans Arena, home of the Hornets, for this week's question from Reggie's Mailbag. And it comes from Omar Serrano. He wants to know which team in NBA history had the greatest trio. Well, Omar, there's a lot. How about the Baltimore Bullets, led by Gus Johnson, Earl the Pearl Monroe, and Wes Unseld? Or how about that 70s championship team of the Knicks with Willis Reed, Dave DeBusschere, Bill Bradley? Or about the Celtics, Larry Legend from the outside, maybe Kevin McHale inside with the Chief, Robert Parrish manning the middle, and maybe the greatest player of my generation from the Chicago Bulls, Michael Jordan, and his sidekick, Scottie Pippen, along with rebounding king Dennis Rodman. But Omar, you wanted to know the greatest trio of all. I'm going to go with the Los Angeles Lakers. Showtime was alive in the 80s because of Magic Johnson in the middle, James Worthy finishing on the break, and if you needed a bucket down low, if the game was close, you went to the cap, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So in my opinion, Magic, Kareem, and Big Game James is the best trio of all time. I appreciate your question, Omar, and if you have a question for me, please send them to Reggie's Mailbag at Turner.com. That's Reggie's Mailbag at Turner.com.
Turner.com.
Hello, everyone. I'm Reggie Miller coming to you from the Staples Center, home of the Los Angeles Lakers, for this week's question for Reggie's Mailbag, and it comes from Andre Mazzarella, who wants to know if there was an all-time 2-on-2 game with Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain versus Kevin Garnett and Shaquille O'Neal, who would win? That's a tough question, Andrew, but you've got to remember, you've got the defensive presence of Bill Russell and one of the most dominant big men of all time and Wilt Chamberlain on one team, and you've got this year's Defensive Player of the Year, Kevin Garnett, going against probably the biggest man on the planet in Shaquille O'Neal. Now, we know that Kevin Garnett is not a real low-post scorer, so he's really going to take Bill Russell out on the floor, which isn't Russell's strength. He was more of manning the defense, blocking shots for that Celtic anger defense. We know Wilt Chamberlain was a beast down low, but I like Shaquille O'Neal in that matchup. At 3+, maybe 350+. I would go with Shaquille O'Neal over Wilt Chamberlain. So in the 2-on-2 game, I'm going to go with Kevin Garnett and Shaq to beat Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell in that 2-on-2 game. I appreciate your question. And if you have a question for me, send it to Reggie's Mailbag at Turner.com. That's Reggie's Mailbag at Turner.com. I appreciate your question. Hello, everyone. I'm Reggie Miller coming to you from the Staples Center, home of the Los Angeles Lakers, as well as Clippers, for this week's questions from Reggie's Mailbag, and it comes from Edward Molina of the Philippines, and he wants to know, in my opinion, who are the top 5 clutch players of all time? Coming in at number 5, Robert Horry. Now, he's done it on 3 different teams. The Houston Rockets, where he won 2 championships. But I think where he's really known for hitting big shots is right here for the Los Angeles Lakers. We all remember that tip back from Vlade Divac when Robert Horry got it at the top of the key to knock down that long 3 in that Western Conference battle against Sacramento. Coming in at number 4, we have the legend himself, Larry Bird. Now, Larry Bird got it done in a number of ways, but more importantly, he was known from his long-range threat for a lot of those clutch shots for the Boston Celtics. At number 3, Triple Ocho, Kobe Bean Bryant. Number 2, Jerry the Logo West. Yes, Jerry West of the Los Angeles Lakers probably could have vied for the #1 spot, but remember that half-court shot in the playoffs to tie it when they didn't have three-point lines back then, so I would have to go at number 2 with Jerry West. But Edward, you wanted to know the top 5 clutch players of all time. My number 1 has to be Air Michael Jordan, number 23, the Chicago Bulls. Now, there's so many shots that we obviously could talk about for Michael, but if you're going to talk about the biggest shot, let's talk about the Utah Jazz and Brian Russell in the push-off. Probably the greatest player of my generation, Michael Jordan. Probably the best clutch player of my generation. So I appreciate your question, Edward. And if you have any questions for myself, please, Reggie Miller at Reggie's Mailbag at Turner.com. That's Reggie's Mailbag at Turner.com. Appreciate it.
Yeah. They say it's alright. They say it's alright. Say it's alright. Have a good time, 'cause it's alright. Everybody knows that it's alright.